Yeah, I want to tell a little bit of my story about the journey into mental illness and emotional illness and how I got set up and how the Lord delivered me and is continuing to deliver me. I grew up in an alcoholic family. When I was in the womb, my dad rejected me, my mother rejected me, and that happens in alcoholic families. When I was a little boy, I was sexually abused. I grew up with fear, anger, guilt, and shame. When I was still in the womb, my mother became suicidal, and I picked that up. So I carried suicide, the thoughts of suicide, and I lived with that. And I thought, you know, this isn't mine, but I was still carrying it. So I got set up for a nervous breakdown when I was 29. I ended up in a mental hospital, and I was there for 9 months. God was with me during all that time because He's given me images of where He was. And my journey of inner healing is, He teaches me through images. When I was in 1981, I ran across a book. I was actually on heavy medication after my breakdown, and I was kind of in a great wilderness. I didn't understand what was going on. And I came across a book called Born Only Once by Dr. Conrad Bars. I asked him if I could come down and see him, because I knew I was a mess. I needed help. I followed his directions on how to develop the pleasure emotions of love and joy. Because in an alcoholic family, there's not a whole lot of love and joy. All these repressed feelings and emotions started to surface. And God was inviting me to start dealing with those. And so I did. I was in conflict with a very abusive supervisor who wanted me out of the post office. He wanted to get rid of me, and I was kind of thrust into 12-step recovery work, the AlAnon programs, and those were lifesavers. I was very suicidal. I went out to kill myself and ended up sitting in an AlAnon meeting. And I don't understand that, but God intervenes in our lives in miraculous ways sometimes. And at the same time, I was in the middle of this crisis. The Holy Spirit called me to go to Medjugorje. I went to Medjugorje. I went to confession, and this priest blessed me with a statue of St. Joseph holding the child Jesus. And so that night I dreamed I was a little boy, about 1.5 years or 2. There was a big cathedral, and as I walked up the steps of this cathedral, St. Joseph was standing in the doorway. And he was dressed in purple, and he scooped me up and held me to his heart, and I was immersed in a purple cloud. So I walked across the room and looked up, and then the tabernacle door opened, and the little child Jesus stepped out, and he was dressed in red. And he just gave me this most beautiful smile, and then he reached into his chest and took out his heart and held it down towards me. That was in 1988. And since that time, I've opened my heart to the Holy Spirit, invited Him to come in and start the work that He needed to do. And so I'm here as participants in what God's work is doing to healing all of us. God's work is healing. The devil's work is destroying. And so it's a choice, and I choose life, and God willing that everybody in the whole world will choose life, like we are. So that's my testimony.